love to invite everyone to take a deep breath with me. Let's take a couple. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor and you can bring your hands so that they're facing the sky. And take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale completely out of your mouth. One more. Shake them out a little. Today is a very special day because we all woke up today. We got to have the air in our lungs and we get to have the choice to move about, who to talk to, what to eat, where to go. And you get to make all these micro choices during your day, and when you get to go to bed at night, you play back what has all happened. And if you're not going to sleep with a smile on your face, I would invite you to try and dig a little deeper in yourself and find the little joys in your life that can make you smile. It might be just having a pudding cup before dinner or after dinner, whenever you eat, or, calling your family and just checking in on them. But there's a lot of people out there that don't get that kind of love and don't see that kind of life. And when you're an older person in this generation, the idea of having community and having a support system around you is extremely important. And sometimes it feels like we have to die in order to get recognition or to send a message to people. And that's just entirely not true when it's an individual life. But unfortunately, it's so widely broadcast fear. I don't watch TV really often. I'm much more of a reader and like a researcher, but my grandmother watches the news religiously, and if you're not aware by now, there was a video that was released from a town in Memphis, and Tyre Nichols was beaten by 5 cops and died 3 days later in hospital over nothing, over absolutely nothing. And paramedics were alongside, did absolutely nothing, and just watched this play out. And my reaction is stunned, completely stunned. The reaction of others has been honest in saying that this was a super savage beating and just completely like we're living in the past, and they can get on there and say, oh, well, they're all black cops and it was a black guy and all this other like stuff where they feed into it and add into it. But when you take all of the nonsense away, these police officers who have authority and power beat this young man to his death over a traffic stop. And I'm telling y'all, if I got pulled over by a traffic stop right now and they've seen how many tickets I didn't pay for yet, they could probably do the same thing to me. And it doesn't affect anyone until it happens to you personally. And in my life, it's not uncommon. I've seen people be beat. I have seen other things in my life. I've seen leading up. I've experienced my own. And I don't know what to say about it. I'm absolutely at a loss for words. And again, the only way I can deal with these kinds of things is by sharing my experience and telling people that there is another way. But for systematic failure, there is no other way until you create a new path, until we shift the mindset, until we reprogram what's already been pushed and taught. It's never going to get better, because you are literally leading wolves into the field of sheep, and like, it's a jungle out there, like, all the time, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I don't know, I'm at a serious loss. And I've been on both sides of the system. I have an uncle who is very near and dear to my family, and he passed away. He was a cop in a part of Toronto, and I witnessed what that funeral looks like. I've seen, what... They're playing cards downstairs. It's very distracting. But I've seen what a funeral for one cop looks like, and the amount of love and memorials done and donating and all these things for one person. But then when it comes time for citizens, and like, there is a serious disconnect still, and it's 2023. Like, what are we doing here? I can't fathom why things don't move faster, but that's something that you learn, is that no matter how much research is being done or new information has come out, we're gonna be like 10 years behind that, because the systems haven't reformed their information to spit it out to people who are supposed to learn it. So I started a counseling program, and very quickly I realized that they didn't really know what they were doing either. They were just giving us books and giving us articles and making us aware. So a lot of what I do is becoming aware and being given tools and skills and listening to other lectures and listening to other experience and having all that soak into my mind so that maybe I can be shaped into a better counselor. For someone who has not only been a victim of drug abuse, a victim of family violence, a victim of intergenerational trauma, and put through several different schooling systems, several different education systems, several different correction systems, I'm telling you right now that we're moving in the right direction. But quite literally, we need the bleeding hearts of the world to unite and to help us fix this problem that affects every single person on this continent, at least. And I can't speak for the US. I don't even know any kind of laws or anything in Canada, but I've been in it. I've seen it. I've been taken by police in a nice way, and I've been brought to hospitals where I see things and then I act up because I'm seeing the real perspective. I'm seeing that when you go in there and they realize what your purpose for being in there, you're immediately labeled. It doesn't matter if you're white, it doesn't matter if you're young or old or anything, you are labeled Oh, someone is fucking bringing their goddamn snowblower by. Do you have to have it running in order to move it? Apparently so. It doesn't matter what your story is when you go in there. If they feel like they've done their job, that's all they care about. And I'm not picking on healthcare workers or psych nurses or doctors. I'm not picking on anyone specifically. This is a systematic failure. And just like me working at A&W and not giving a shit if I didn't give you enough fries or if I put gravy on your poutine and you come back screaming at me, I don't care. I don't care at all. And it's the same mentality for a lot of these people who work in units that have very, a varied amount of clientele or patients, and they just need to do their job in order to ensure their safety and your safety and everyone else's safety. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of mental help to supplement what they can physically do for you. Because when you go in there and you tell them one thing, somehow they will convince you or help you become more aware of how they think you should be treated. And this works for a lot of people. I'm not saying it doesn't, but for the people such as myself who knows myself, who knows my family, who knows my history, who knows my family's history and my DNA and all of the things that make me me, you can't send somebody like me in there and not expect them to put up a massive fight. The very first time I was in a psych ward, I was brought there willingly because I was feeling loopy. And I was on a 4-day bender of not a lot of sleep and just withdrawing from drugs that they gave me because I didn't want to take them anymore. And by myself. This was the first time. I've done this multiple times. But I was lucky enough that the friends that I have understand the system like I do, and they knew what to do. When you don't know how to protect your friends or provide a wellness check, it's important that you just try and pick up clues as you go along and try and get in the other person's head. And if you don't know, call somebody, call their family, call the cavalry if you have to, because quite literally you could be saving this person's life in that moment. But when I was taken because I was just losing my mind. That seems to be my thing, because I've just watched a lot of movies, specifically a lot of war movies, because I loved hanging out with my dad. So I've watched a lot of war movies and a lot of history movies, and like dramas or documentaries. So everything that's been downloaded in my brain, sometimes those scripts can get really like wired in me, and I don't know how to use my dialogue, so I'll use a different dialogue. And by the time they got me into the hospital, I was sat in the ER or whatever holding room that they put us in. And my first observation was that they didn't give me any water or food. I went in there telling them that I hadn't eaten or really drank anything in about 4 days. And when I went in, the very first thing that they asked me was, do you want to go back on your medication? And I stood up and I said, can you believe these people? Can you actually believe this? I'm here because I don't want to be on my medication. What are you talking about? And I was like, get me some water, da-da-da. And she left me and she didn't come back. And on one hand, rightfully so, I was acting up. But on the other hand, I was in a state of mental chaos. And their job in that moment is to stabilize me, and I had a cop with me. She was safe. I wasn't threatening to hurt anyone. I wasn't threatening to hurt myself. But I had previously run away, and I say run away like I'm like a child, but when I say run away, like I go for a really long walk. I don't know what I'm looking for. A lot of the time, I'm hoping that lightning strikes me, or just something happens that changes my situation. But every time I went out looking, nothing has happened to me. And I stand and I look at the stars and I look at the sky and I look at the cars driving by and I just think, what now? You've gotten yourself all the way out here. What now? What are you doing? And so I always have to go home. But when home isn't supportive, you just always feel like you're floating. So when I left and I got taken away to the hospital, I was set on this journey and taken into a different dimension. And when I speak about dimensions, there's different layers and different levels to that. There's the outer dimension and the spirit world, which is all around us and right in front of us. I've seen it a lot, both sober and not sober. The dinosaurs aren't, it's not what you think it is. But we'll get into a lot more of that later. But you can go into anyone's dimension. Everyone's house is different. You go into a new school, that's a different dimension. You go to your grandma's house across Canada, that's a whole other dimension. They do life an entire different way. Like, they still say the N-word around here. Like, this is a crazy little dimension I've got myself in. But they all mean well because they're just living in their little secluded world. And when you're thrown into different dimensions over and over and over again, you feel like a bit of a character and that you've got to play a role for these people because you don't quite know how to act. And when I got into the psych ward the first time, I knew exactly how I was going to act. And it was that I wasn't going to act. I heard over and over and over again in my brain, the truth will set you free. I actually have a tattoo. I met my big sister in there, and I won't name her, but she got me through, and I have a tattoo on my stomach for her in her name, and somebody drew me a rose in the hospital, and I also have that tattooed above it. So all my tattoos have meanings to me, but we're not getting into that. But I heard the truth will set you free over and over and over. That was the only thing. Is from the moment I was starting to lose my mind in my condo to when I was walking the street and up until the cops got me and when I got in that hospital. And I said, just be yourself. You're here to get help. Just be yourself. And you know what I got greeted with? Everybody who I needed to see. When I first got in there, I was in my own office and this young man just walked by. A couple times. He would walk by and then go back and then walk by again, and I was just kind of like, hey. And he sat and just talked to me. And he was in there for God knows what reason. He was really quiet. And he just sat and talked with me a little bit. And I said, you remind me of my brother. Somebody who just, he isn't around all the time, but he's always coming to check on me. And you're like an older brother. And eventually me and him, he was on one side of the room and I proceeded to get my own bed. And nobody checks on you. Nobody gives you, things unless you ask for it and you ask nicely. So I had an amazing nurse finally come in and try and get me through it. But previous to that, I didn't want to take any of their medication. And because of this, I literally refused Ativan. I refused to have an Ativan, and I was crying, and I said, I don't want to be on this. This stuff makes me insane. I don't want to be on my borderline medication, or, I take Seroquel, so, quetiapine, those things, antipsychotics. And I said, I don't want this. It's making me worse. I hate this, and it's making me worse. And you know what they did with my ass? They surrounded me with security, and they told me that they would inject me with God knows what if I didn't do what I was told. And for someone who is educated, a little crazy for sure, but I'm educated, I'm respectful. You can bring me in front of your parents and your grandparents, and I don't cuss, and I'm a good person in general. And I just sat there like, all right, so this is what we're doing, hey? This is how it's gonna be. And my only means of protest was to piss them off. So I opened the freaking orange juice that comes in a cup that is more plastic that I hate, and I spilled it all over myself, and I took the Ativan because sometimes you do need it, and obviously I relaxed and calmed down after that. But it was the people that were coming in that really helped me puzzle myself together. So another person that came in was a girl, and my heart just goes out to her when I think about her, because she came in and explained her situation, which was not a good situation, and she came there to find sanctuary, and she had rope burn all around her neck, and telling them about what her home life was. And they said, well, as long as you got a roof over your head, I guess you're good to go home. And I hope she still has my lava rock, because that's the person that has that necklace. And there's a part of her on me too. I never really thought of that until now. But it was all I could do in the moment, because I'm a superhero and I want to go save people. And when I'm on the inside, I think I can save people, but they're doing the suppressing. The system is. So she left. Further into the night, another man came in. They said he was off the street. He said he was feeling woozy and all these things, and they sat him in the chair and they tried to take his blood. And while they were taking his blood, or trying to find a vein, which they couldn't, they asked how much water he'd had that day, and he said, I hadn't had any. And they didn't give him water. So I got up out of my bed, and I got him a glass of water, and I knelt down beside all the nurses and beside him, and I said, hey, take this, please take this. And they took it from me, and they didn't let him drink. And I understand there's a protocol to taking blood and getting vitals, and you have to have things a certain way. But even after they took it, they didn't give him the water. That shit is animalistic, man. I could get sad over every single person, and that's not... I can't live my life like that. I'm so highly sensitive that when I see somebody come in there, I think of them as my uncle or my dad or my sister or my brother or somebody connected to me. And that's just because the way that I was brought up. But after that man left, there was other people being brought in, and I was just making fun of, not making fun, but I was just like messing around with the cops and being like, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite movie? And they wouldn't look at me, and they wouldn't acknowledge me. And I would just say, man, I'm not even messed up. I'm just waiting for my dad. He's not coming to get me. In the middle of the night, there was this guy that came in. I didn't see him or hear him. And I was trying to sleep, and his phone kept dinging. And I let it ding like 5 times before I like freaked out. And I was like, shut that shit off now. And from his little corner, he's like, I'm sorry. And then I was like, it's okay. And then like I got out of bed and rolled over. I was like, I'm such a dick. So I got out, went to the door and went and sat down, and I was like, are you doing okay? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, you're not. We're both in here. And we proceeded to just talk. And he told me about his son and about his wife and about what his life is and how hard it is to raise a child in this generation and feel like you're doing the right thing and eating the right foods and with all this chemical castration around us. And he explained to me that there's chemicals in milk that make you addicted to it and all these other things. And we just had this conversation at 1 a.m. or whatever time. But we just sit there and story tell to each other so we don't feel alone. And I love that so much. And him and the other guy, they let me talk all night. And I was like, are you leaving me? Are you going somewhere? And I just hope that they're okay somewhere too. Because I still remember and I care about you. And they're still playing cards downstairs. So there was one more that I want to bring to this conversation because it was the one that really changed my life. So when I was laying there, I don't know what time it was, they brought this kid in and he looked identical to my cousin with the stupid glasses on and a hoodie and camo pants. His name was Kalen. And I yelled at him. I said, what's that kid's name? Give me that kid's name. And I said, I heard you come in. I was like, I want you to know you're the fucking reason I'm in here. And you need to stop doing all that shit that you're doing. Oh, my dad's calling me. And he just listened. He didn't say much. He had all of his face covered. Finally, after that, I just realized that was my omen. That Kaylin came through and I didn't need to wait for my parents. I didn't need to wait for anyone else. That my sign, that I was in the right place, right time, it was right in front of me. It was right there. I have his name tattooed on me. You can't get closer than that. And I could go on and on about all the things that I did in there. All the things that I seen, and I will talk about them in future things, but they didn't come and check on me until about 11 o'clock the next day. I'm in the same room. You can see the glass and all the nurses right there in that small room right before you get into the psych ward. And they're just doing their thing and not acknowledging. And I took a mouthful of water and I spit it at their window. And that's when I got surrounded again. And I said, y'all ain't feeding me. Y'all ain't doing shit. Y'all just letting us sit here and be manic and be freaked out. There was even this other guy in there and he couldn't speak. Like, I don't know if he was deaf or if, like, maybe just English wasn't for him. Like, he couldn't speak English, but he kept, like, and then walking around and pacing. And I said, man, yo. I was like, let's get big. Like, get big for a minute. Just, it's okay, man. Get big. We're in here. We can take up space. You don't have to feel like you're enclosed in here. You can take up space. Let's get big. And she told us to go back to our room. Quit going out here. Quit being in my sight. And that same nurse, she wouldn't let me do yoga. I was like, I accidentally said F you to the doctor and I like apologized real quick. So they were watching me pretty close, but before I went to bed that night, like the night before, before I don't even know the timeline, but I really thought I was gonna die. And I asked the lady, I said, I had this vision when I was 8 years old that I would go to sleep and I'd never wake up. I didn't know if that was going to happen today or not. She said, no, you're going to be fine. And she was on the other side, and we got to reconnect. And it's people like that that really keep me alive, you know? People that just tell you how it is. Yeah, it's shitty right now, but in an hour, you might get a pudding cup. Instead of just telling you that you're a nuisance and that you're another number. Because you are just a number. But to somebody, you're their daughter. To somebody, you're their best friend. And there's people out there that care about me so much, and I let them down all the time. Or I think that I do. And they think that they do so much for me, and why can't I just figure it out? But currently, this is me figuring it out. I'm not on a timeline. I don't have anywhere important to be other than right where I'm sitting right now, talking to you. And that's just my life. I don't worry about much other than being a good example to the people that I love. And sometimes, like I've been told, you gotta get through the experiences in order to have the story to tell your experience. And it keeps on stacking up and staying in my soul and staying in my head. And I'm not in school anymore right now. I had to take a pause from that because they don't know what they're doing. And I'm smart enough to know that if I stay in something that doesn't know what they're doing, I'm not going to know what I'm doing. So I'm not saying quit school and run away from your parents and be a rapper or, you know, do anything. I'm just saying this world is so hurt, and we're on this ship, and it takes nothing to sit down with somebody and just ask them anything. I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I think I'll end it here. And I hope that you got something out of this, because I know I got something out. And I'm really thankful for the people that have chosen to love me and understand me and take the time. It's not all gonna be sunshine and roses, but I'll always have a smile on my face till the day I die. Every day that I get up and I got breath in my lungs. That's some possibility right there. So, again, my heart goes out to that young man who was beaten. I've been folded too. Not just by cops. Getting your neck stepped on doesn't feel good to anyone. Now that all this is out, y'all get in the rawest form of me. And that's just who I wanted to give you all along. I am a healer. I am a descendant of spiritual, beautiful, enchanting water and heaven and hell and spirit, and none of this exists. It's just words. Words create reality. We hallucinate reality. And y'all just in mine. So, fuck the 27 Club. Come into my dimension. Everybody take a deep breath in. Out. Thank you so much for joining me today. I wish you so much love from the bottom of my heart to the tops of yours.